In about 1983, and I'm terrible for years, I was playing in a band called the Fuegos, and we drove... You're too generous. We drove from Boston to Minneapolis so that we could play the 7th Street entry. And the band, I mean, this is at the point where you don't have the money to get hotel rooms. Hotel rooms seem like that's for Led Zeppelin and no one else at that point. And so 2 of us stayed on the Stinson's floor in their living room. I was one of those 2. And then 2 stayed at Peter Jesperson's apartment. And our road crew of 1 slept in the van. And so I was at the Stinson's, and the Replacements were a band that we got lumped in with quite a bit, and we didn't know how good we had it. We didn't know really that much about them. I couldn't put my finger on what the Replacements were. I heard hardcore in there, but then they didn't have short hair. The clothes were wrong. They were some kind of hybrid that I couldn't arrive at. And when we were sleeping on the Stinson's floor, what I remember is waking up, and there was Bob sitting in an upholstered chair just looking at me. And I'm in a sleeping bag, and Bob's looking at me, and he sees my eyes open, and he's got a 16-ounce beer can in his hand. He says, "You think you could give me a ride downtown?" But he's a gentleman. He's waiting until I wake up. He could have been there for hours. And then Tommy comes down the stairs, and he's got high-top Converse, 1 green, 1 orange. And his hair is sticking straight up. He's just used a lot of hairspray. And, we're just not, the next night I slept in the van. I was too confused by it all. And eventually in our career paths with the Replacements, at first it was we were grouped in with them. And then it became a little bit of a thing of competition. And then it became a thing of envy. And then it became a thing of realizing that we were flattering ourselves just being envious. And we got it too. Despite our wishes, we got it that this was a band that was going to be remembered in 50 years. In a few of the interviews that I've done with producers, I've hit them with the question of what act do you wish you could get your hands on and do some reinvention. And a few of them have said, I'd like to get my hands on Paul Westerberg and make a Westerberg record. Why would you advise against this?
I like guys that work fast. And most producers who make a lot of money and make big records take a lot of time and a lot of takes. And I only like to sing a song twice, no more than that. Yeah.
Is there anybody that you could think of that you'd be interested in taking another crack at working with a producer who might take a little longer?
Maybe John Perry of The Only Ones that would be my first choice.
Of the ones that you worked with, which is a pretty long list,
oh yeah,
who do you think best understood the Westerberg predicament?
Unquestionably, Matt Wallace was the one.
And was it clear right away with like "Don't Tell a Soul" that it was working, or did it really come to fruit in the solo stuff?
That record sounded way different. They brought in like a hotshot mixer who made it sound like the radio. But if you ever get your hand on the rough tapes, it was his thing was to capture us live in the studio.
But was he going with that? Let's really try to get this in the first take, or was he the kind of guy that you'd allow to push you to do more than you normally would?
Yes, he would. The only problem with him is he had a tendency of running out into the studio rather than using the talk back. Because it was like, oh God, here he comes again.
What about in overdubbing? Because I mean, as the work that comes out of your basement suggests, you're not opposed to overdubbing by any stretch.
No.
What was Matt's relationship to overdubbing, and where do you figure out the stopping point? When do you stop putting stuff on it?
Matt would describe it as a house of cards. And the song is, okay, we got all this junk on it, now let's take stuff away until it falls apart. And then right before it falls apart, that's all it needs. The problem was that we were, on Warner Brothers, and Lenny Warnaker would come in, and check it out. And I'll Be You in particular, he said there's something wrong with this. So it's not there. So, he went back and Matt sped the song up about, a quarter increment. And Lenny came back and went, that's it. I don't know what you guys put on there. We didn't do anything. We just sped it up a little bit. There's a spontaneity that doesn't come on the sixth take. And it's just, some bands, some artists are capable of doing 27 takes, and number 27 is it. Tom Petty's a good example. But we weren't. We would go in there and give it all of our might. We were pooped by the third version. So then we'd try it the next day, and every day we'd try it 3 times, and we'd probably end up using the first or second version on the first day. Doctored up a little.
Don was.
Yeah.
At the time, he's, he had huge success with Bonnie Raitt. He's doing the Stones. Everywhere you look, he's there. What was his approach with you in the studio?
He was, he may have been the coolest of all because he let a lot of my original recordings stand where they brought the tapes in, and then he and Jim Keltner would just overdub to my acoustic guitar and voice. And he was really good about that. When he felt something didn't stand up, a certain song, he would be vocal about it. He would say, this is not your best work. And, those are always the ones that I kind of like. But I remember him calling me after, because this was the classic example. The day the record was mastered, I went to the mastering in Maine with Bob Ludwig. I got a call from Gary Gersh, the president of Capitol, who was our champion, who basically said, I'm leaving the company today, the day our record was mastered. And it was sort of like, gee, thanks. Because, anything that belonged to him went right on the shelf. And Don called me later and said, I don't give a damn what anybody says. I think we made a great record, and I agree with him. I read it somewhere differently, that the difference between a good song and a great song is a great bridge. And Elvis Costello, Paul McCartney are 2 prime examples where instead of having a release from the music you've already heard, they'll take another song that has a great chorus, but they don't know what to do with. So they'll maybe take that melody and put it in the proper key. And I've sort of followed that rule to keep the bridge from sometimes a little too sweet, but I think the bridge should lift it to the next level. Sort of.
But you're also you're going up in your register,
yeah,
to drive the point home.
It's against common songwriting knowledge. The bridge should be a bluesy 7th diversion from whatever is melodic, and I sometimes, go right to the open nerve during the bridge.
But it should also, tell me if you kind of subscribe to this, is it should make the chorus resonate a little bit differently when the chorus comes back in.
True. But I never bothered finishing the tune after the good bridge.
What was the adjustment for you? And you know, you've been a playground monitor. What's the adjustment?
I liked it way more than I was anticipating. I was frightened at first, and then I found it so fulfilling that I kind of found it hard to strap on the guitar again, the electric guitar at least. It was harder work than touring, or maybe comparable if you're on a real 3 month, 5 days a week. But I mean, you know how it is. You're up all night long, you don't sleep. So I already had that down from touring and everything. So I was cool to get up at 4 a.m. and hang out.
But you did serve the full-time dad capacity.
I did, yeah. I was, he was my one and only son, and I loved him. I used to love him to this minute,
Could you see yourself getting back into a touring lifestyle?
Well, I did when he was younger, and now that he's gotten older, it's more difficult. It's probably more difficult for me too, anyway. But he knows when I'm playing, and he'll come in and interrupt me. He's a little bit wary when Dad goes away, and people come up to him and who I don't know. We've been together where strangers, fans, have come up, and not in an obtrusive way really, but have asked for an autograph or said something, and he would say, "Dad, who's that?" And I'd say, "I don't know. I've never met them." And so that plays with a little kid's mind.
Yeah.
He's like, "Boy, I don't ever want to be famous," and it's like,
Yeah.
Right on.
Well, but it would also seem odd that if you look at "Come Feel Me Tremble," you get to look at your kind of subterranean world at home.
Yeah.
And it's a very strange world. What is his experience of coming down there and catching you in the act? Of high-end strangeness, not just playing guitar.
He actually was more involved. He used to want to come in and jam. He used to insist to come in, and I, got him on vocals on things, and just him screaming and whatever. And he's now shied away from that, and he kind of knows to come in, and if he sees the red lights on, then he'll wait a couple seconds before he knocks something over to get my attention.
But does he have an experience like, oh, Dad's transformed into that other thing?
As much as I hate to call it a job, I have to explain it to him that it's my job. It's like your other buddies' friends, fathers, they go to work every day, and it's like, you've got something different here. It's like, I'm home for 3 years, but then there's going to be a time where I might have to go away for half a year. And I did that, and it didn't help any of us really, other than make a little money.
Right. So were you to go back to the touring model, it would probably be a matter of waiting until he's, how old is he now?
9.
But waiting a little bit until he becomes a teenager and it gets messy, and then you can go on the road?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of bands wait till their kids are young enough to join the group, and that's a little sad in a way. But of all instruments, he picked out the trombone because he knew it was one thing that I had no idea what to do with. But he's really bright. He's very, very bright and sensitive. So I think doing soundtrack stuff for that film, that was kind of my way of coming and going, but not being gone for more than 2 weeks at a shot.
You do a lot of open tunings.
Mm-hmm.
Did you use open tunings as a way of just opening up something new song-wise? Because a lot of people sit down and if they need to mix it up or else they're going to keep writing the same song.
Yeah. It's the voicing of the notes. It's similar to piano. That's why piano players tend to write. Like Ben Folds is someone example who writes really clever and beautiful melodies, and that comes from the spread of the chords. If you're just banging a C chord, your range is going to be in the same way. If you do an open chord, the voicing is different, and it makes you sing a different note.
Are you always in the process of exploring another possibility there just to keep it changing?
It's come back to bite me in the ass a little bit, because you get problems with out of tuneness and stuff like that, and switching a guitar every song, and the thing that really brought me down to earth, I think, is like after I think I'm all over the joint, and 2 years later I asked Tommy, "What are you doing there?" And he goes, "I'm hitting an A." What's the other chord? A D. So all along it was an A and a D. If I'd have known that, I never would have wrote the song. But I fooled myself into, I got something here.
There's a deep-seated romantic myth that you got to suffer for your art. Do you believe in it?
I've done a lot of suffering. I hit a dry spell the past year where I couldn't write anything. I couldn't pick up a guitar and play at all. And I just started to break through and record songs when this came up. And then to jump from creating to recreating is very, very difficult. Just like it's hard on the road when you're performing to create something new. You got to kind of keep it in your back pocket till you're home. But sometimes they fall out of the sky, and sometimes you got to labor over something. For Bookmark, I guess, is a good example of a song. I played that over a year solid until I decided what the words should be, and that's rare for me.
You described the songs that fall from the sky and the ones that you labor over. Is there anything you can do to kind of set the scene to make it more likely that something will come along? Is it better if you have a dog at your feet or a log on the fire? Is there anything you do?
It helps when I have an empty house, when I can shout at the top of my lungs, usually in the bathroom. I usually go to whatever bathroom on the floor, to still watch myself in the mirror. But no, it's the tiles, the tile and the sound. And once I got a good idea, I need to stand up and see if it really is a good idea. A lot of times I fooled myself by sitting down thinking I had something, and perhaps they're a little too precious sometimes.
But is the sitting also that you're not projecting as much as you would, with your voice? Is that why you do that test?
Yeah, it's just another way that I write. Those kind of No Place for You, Cracker and Drag, those kind of songs that have a specific person in mind and meaning. The lyrics kind of come first, and then I sit down and hone them to a melody, hopefully not anyone's in the,
Is it a matter of like you're watching the family go out the driveway and then you go, all right?
Well, it was when I was a kid. I would wait for the family to leave, and then there was a period when I got divorced and, went back to live at home for like 6 months. And I knocked out a bunch of tunes there, and yeah, it's good because you got a half an hour because somebody's going to be back, so hurry up and get it done, and that does help.
On the documentary, you give one-word responses to the various records, hootenanny, afraid,
Right.
But when it gets all shook down, there's a long space, and then the camera just cuts. You have nothing to say, but to me, All Shook Down is actually one of the best sequenced records, and I think track to track, I wouldn't get rid of anything. Why your ambivalence? Why did you have nothing to say about it?
I think I had the look on my face of a man who's remembering and regretting. And there was a whole other story that went with it, involving the end of one relationship and another one, and coincidentally the end of the relationship with the band, because it wasn't a fun time.
Can you, just separating that off, musically, what do you think of it?
I think it's got some of the best songs. It doesn't have the best playing or whatever. I mean, Scott Litt had Charlie Drayton play drums on a couple tracks, and Tommy's on it. Tommy and I play on it a lot, and Chris was barely on it, and it was just a tense time within the group, kind of.
Because musically, it feels like the palette's getting bigger. The range of songwriting approaches is more expansive than anything up to that point. That's my take on it. Like, maybe going back to the bad times make for good tunes theory.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember us doing when it began, and I wanted it to be acoustic and sort of sound like Poco or the Burrito Brothers with a steel guitar, and it was like, no. Let's put a big rock guitar on this thing, and we were really getting like, this is your last chance, and you got to do this and that, and in the end, I think I got what we wanted.
Where was the "this is your last chance" coming from, or where did you perceive that to be coming from?
From the from Warner's, Time Warner. It was pretty obvious that if this record didn't chart with a hit, that you guys would be on the outside looking in.
How did Scott Litt as a producer, deal with the? It's tough to get an artist whose life is in turmoil to do what's needed. How did he handle that?
He had a couple of master strokes of Sadly Beautiful. I laid down, and he just turned to me and he said, who would be good on this? John Cale. And I'm like, yeah, he would. He goes, I'm going to call him. And it was like, I couldn't believe it. And the funny thing is that Lou Reed came down the following. Now I'm getting ahead of myself, but anyway, Cale comes in and was just like a musician. He listened to it and he gave me a compliment or made a remark that I never bothered to ask in which meaning he meant, but he listened to Sadly Beautiful and he said, it reminds me of Nico. And I wanted to say, you mean it brings Nico back to you, or it feels the song like Nico? But I just sort of took that as like, yeah, thank you, go play what you want, do whatever you want, And that was, that was great. So that, we had that big list of like musicians who played and stuff, but that gets overlooked, that John Cale actually came in and, had to put a towel that had been vomited on or something to play his viola. And then Lou Reed was coming down the next night, so we had to hide Cale's equipment because if Lou saw it, he would have like left immediately.
But tell me how you think about sequencing, because it's an art that doesn't get talked about that much.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as a lot of artists have tried to do, you'll try to make it flow harmonically, like you do a cycle of fifths. The first one's in the key of E, so the next one's in the key of B. And all of that goes out the window when you listen to like Madman Across the Water by Elton John, because the first two songs are pretty much the same chords. And that feels so beautiful the way they go into each other. So if you have the great songs, it really doesn't matter. It's almost getting too clever for yourself. And then somebody will always say, well, why are you burying this great song as number 10? And I always thought it was good to like leave a really, really good one at the end.